First off, guidance has been explored from multiple perspectives over the last decade. Using certain stimuli, devices can help produce a feedback akin to real sensations. For example, here we have a list of multiple stimuli such as vibrotactile, pressure, movement of mass, and electric stimulation. And from them, we can get a feedback such as guidance, weight, heat, or texture, for example. We can have vibrotactile stimuli on the wrist or the head and get back guidance and a direction. Signals coming from active devices are nonetheless part of a whole of multiple feedbacks our body perceives alongside others such as sight, smell, proprioceptive feedback as well. And each signal is weighted differently based on mostly past experiences and reliability of these signals. So in order to have a usable haptic device in real conditions, his feedback must be reliable and the haptic device must be accepted by the user, thus needing to be trusted. For searching tasks, for example, many haptic devices use vibrotactile stimuli to give indications on orientation. But when searching a little further, it is easier to follow a continuous information, like when following a GPS to find direction. And it's exactly what we did. As an added difficulty to truly test the performances of our haptic device, we decided to have inverted hand control, what we call incongruence in this research. So for example, when having the dominant hand, your right hand that you will use, if you try to do a circle, visually you'll have your left hand do the circle the other way. It's like seeing your hand through a mirror, technically, a mirror placed perpendicularly in front of you. And with this inversion in mind and two devices in hand, we decided to use both and see if there are any incidents in having feedback on the used hand versus non-used hand. And with all this in mind, once again, these are the research questions that we try to answer in this study. So first off, can inversion of visual and proprioceptive signals along one axis only increase mental workload? Then what is the impact of congruent versus incongruent visual proprioceptive mapping on task efficiency? And finally, can continuous changes in haptic pressure indicating whether the user is moving towards or away from a target support object search under sensory conflict? And these are our hypotheses. So first off, incongruence visual signal will result in higher subjective mental workload. Second one, haptic feedback will result in higher efficiency and lower variability compared to no haptic. 3 and 4 are mostly similar. Average completion time and average total distance traveled by the hand will be lower or higher depending of if there is a haptic device or not. Well, lower when there's no haptic device, and higher with incongruent visual signals compared to congruent visual signals. Fifth one, participants will report greater reliance on haptic feedback in the incongruent conditions where they will be less habituated to the situation. And finally, participants will rate the haptic system as more helpful during incongruent condition. Before delving into the method, this is our haptic device that is custom made and used by the participants to complete the task. So it uses a dual pump actuation to move around pressure between two inflatable pouches, a control board connecting the device to a project via Bluetooth, and a pressure sensor to calibrate so that everyone has the same feeling of pressure on the wrists, even if they have different sizes of forearms. For the environment, we have a starting zone here in red, and multiple targets that are visible during, that are invisible during the experiment, and placed equidistantly from the starting zone as to not discriminate against left-handed people or right-handed people. The task consists of putting your hand in the starting zone, look for the invisible target in their environment, grabbing it, and bringing it back to the center. And this constitutes a single attempt at one scenario, and each scenario needs 3 attempts to be completed and to have an average. And the scenarios are all the combinations of congruency, incongruency with the haptic device inactive, activated on the dominant hand, and activated on the subdominant hand. And for easier naming, we used acronyms to name them. So for example, C and H corresponds to congruent, the C of congruent, N of no, and H of haptic. Each participant only needs to do 1 session to go through all the scenarios, and the tests are counterbalanced using a Latin square to reduce all their effects. After answering a few questions and watching a video tutorial of the task to ensure an equal amount of information for each participant, subjects were phonically isolated using white noise and alternated between a scenario and a series of questionnaires as subjective measures. Using this method, we gathered various objective and subjective data. So for the objective, we have the completion time and distance traveled by the hand, and the target position in space is more of an information in this case. And for the subjective measures, we have multiple questionnaires. So the simulator sickness questionnaire, an embodiment questionnaire, a haptic guidance questionnaire that is custom made for this experiment, NASA TLX for the mental workload, and FMS for a quick score of sickness. On the participants side for the results, we had 24 participants for a within subject analysis with ages ranging between 20 and 38 years old. So looking at the physical measures, we can at first see a slight, at first sight see a large difference, between the lighter and the darker colors in the graphs. That corresponds respectively to congruent and incongruent scenarios. So when comparing results of the same color, we observe that there is no significant differences between haptic and no haptic scenarios. And we can also see that in the case of congruent scenarios, so in dark, the haptic one had slightly higher completion time and total distance compared to no haptic. So this may be either due, in our opinion, to systematic search instead of the use of the haptic device, or a misinterpretation of the haptic cue that they received. During the experiments, we saw some participants using systematic search in space instead of using the device to find the invisible targets. So to filter them out, we tried to observe and also observe the effects of them being included or excluded from the results. We used a combination of both completion time and total distance traveled to look for people having a lower completion time and a higher distance traveled, like one of the people you can see on these graphs for the CDH in particular, so the third column, where the lowest point in completion time corresponds to the highest point in the total distance. And also, it is worthy to note that the results were not significantly affected by the people using systematic search, because there were not a lot of them. As I mentioned earlier, we created the HGEQ, which is a guidance questionnaire custom that is divided in 3 dimensions related to guidance. So the perception of cue clarity, trust and reliance in the haptic system, and if the system was assistive or interfering with the task. As for the results of the questionnaire, we found no significant results between the 4 scenarios involving haptic, meaning that in every scenario using haptic, its use is similar and not overwhelmingly different in a specific scenario. So, but we can still observe an average to positive opinion regarding the device and its original intent of guidance. Finally, regarding the mental workload generated by the incongruency, we observe a significant increase in the results, getting scores nearly 3 times higher than in congruent scenarios. And furthermore, in the congruent scenarios, we only encountered 2 participants who scored higher than 30 on the scale of the NASA TLX, brought back to 100. But it remains under the average of the incongruency scenarios. The experiment was obviously, but unfortunately not perfect, with the haptic device being too slow to fill up or empty itself to follow the movements of the participants, needing 22 full seconds going from empty to entirely full. And at the same time, some participants abused the system by using systematic search instead of the given haptic device. And even if the numbers remain small, the results we obtain remain reliable and interesting in this scope. The possibility of cheating the task tells us that having a search task in a short distance scenario like we had was not optimal, even more when taking into account the state of the haptic device at the time. Choosing a grab interaction as well as a secondary task on top of it was also not optimal, considering individual experience and the timer stopping condition, with some participant taking a small amount of time to find the target, but a longer time to grab it and bringing back to the center. As seen in the results, some people went faster through basic research without relying on feedback. And when looking at the different results of the inverted scenarios, more specifically at the total distance and completion time, it still helped them to find a general direction of the target. Also, without prior experience with the haptic device itself, participants couldn't refer themselves to a positive experience with the device and thus relying less on it. And even though some of our hypotheses regarding trust and assistiveness were rejected, the haptic device still received a positive opinion. In the end, the experiment was an exploratory study on the use of unidimensional pressure as a guidance signal. We expected better guidance from the system, but we also expected less exploitability of the experiment. As for the limitations, the first one is that and mostly the only one, is that it's not suited for a short distance search task, at least at the level we had it. But since then, the system has been upgraded to be way faster, more accurate, and with more feedback options for more diverse utility. The one we use still remains simple to implement, with the drawbacks eliminated in a large-scale experiments. To conclude, we believe that there is potential in using continuous pressure for the mapping of unexplored haptic techniques currently relying on other stimuli like we did with guidance here. Thank you very much.
Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Thank you. A very nice presentation. I'm just wondering, why did you choose forearm to evaluate the pressure? Because the tasks were more like, picking something from the hand, so could be gloves or something.
So for this experiment, we only used hand tracking. So using gloves, it was sometimes a little janky and sometimes it's lost tracking. Also for the pressure, since we used pressure, it was easier to find a plane surface with which we can correctly press on with the pressure sensor so that we can have a similar pressure between everyone. So this is why we use the forearm, and also since it's the hand that is moving, we had a requirement of using the haptic device on one hand or the other and not using another part of the body.
Anyone else? So I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.